Well, as my stat men now that I got two of them work on things, I can't believe it's the 19th year of this event. I remember going to my first Big Ten meeting when they voted on this and the conference tournament and different things, and it seems like forever ago. But in saying that, it's our first challenge game with both teams in the top five. And we have had a couple where we've had it 3 and 6 or 2 and 6, but 3 and 5, I guess it's the first time, so that's great for our fans. It's great for us too, but I think our fans have, talk all the time about getting better home games, and trust me when I say when we were getting Kentucky to go home and home, and Texas was a good home and home, and Louisville had been a good home and home, and it's just hard to get teams in. So getting a great home game is even better. I'm expecting a great environment at Breslin. I know how much it does mean to our fans, and having Notre Dame in football, that has been such a good rivalry. This could be great. Notre Dame is the third team that we're going to play that's in the top 10. We've played 1, 9, and now 5. And I think it speaks volumes for our schedule. But I think it's going to still help us in the long run. You get a better idea of what your team's like. We've definitely seen some strengths of our team, and we've definitely seen some warts on our team. Looking back at the weekend, defensively was a strength. I was just talking to Danton, and as he said, with goalies, doesn't matter what sport you're in, defense makes a difference. We held teams to 28% from the field, 21 from the 3. Those are incredible numbers, especially with some of the teams we played. At times we were okay offensively. In fact, at times we were pretty good, but we have a lot of room for improvement. We won a championship for 2 reasons. One, our defense and rebounding was, I thought, at a very high level against a couple of pretty good teams and one real good team. And number 2, we got production from different people. Who'd ever think you'd go on a 3-game weekend, and McQuaid has a career high on Thursday, Cassius on Friday, and Josh on Sunday. And each one of them did other things. Cassius has improved his defense, I think, more and more. And McQuaid was playing with a severely sprained arch. We didn't even think he'd play in the last game, but he did it in the second game, and that threw him off a little bit. And Josh, I think, is continuing to make progress both offensively and defensively, rounding out to the type of 2-guard we thought we were getting. So that was a big key. And with Notre Dame right now coming off the Maui, they're playing as well as anybody in the country and with a lot of confidence. Mike has done a great job there over the years. They've been one of the more offensively efficient teams. Each and every year they rank in the top 5 with offensive efficiency. This year their defenses numbers are very good. They are shooting 53 from the field and 43 from the 3-point line, and also very well at the free throw line. So that makes them a tough cover. They've got a consensus All-American in Colson, who's averaging almost 20 and 10. But the kid Farrell and Gibbs, Farrell really runs their team. He has improved each and every year he's been there. He has really improved this year as a passer and as a scorer. And I think the other thing that concerns me is I think they've got 3 or 4, seniors and juniors. Their center, Gibbon, is a senior. Bonzi's a senior. Farrell's a senior. I think one of their other guys, Gibbs, is a sophomore. And I think their 5th starter is a junior or senior also. So a very veteran team that's been through a lot of big games there, plays in a good conference, and has gone deep into the tournament with some of those guys. So big challenge for us. So questions?
Tom, I have 2 of them for you. First of all, last time you played Notre Dame down at South Bend, I asked Mike Bray, I told him how you wanted to schedule them every year, and he just flat said he didn't want anything of it. Their season's too difficult with the ACC. Is that one of the difficult parts of scheduling, is the fact unless people are mandated with this challenge, it's hard to get people to come here and play you?
Well, we've gotten to the point, unfortunately, where these made-for-TV events and these promoters, there's a lot of these neutral games. You know, I'm not as big a fan of a lot of neutral games. I mean, you're going to play the three, whether it's Maui, whether it's Portland, whether it's Bahamas, whether it's Orlando. You're going to play those, but they're even getting some other the big matchup games. You know, it was us in Kentucky, you know, or us in Carolina, or you know, when we played Texas. Those were big games, and now instead of playing them home and home, we've kind of gone neutral, which I'm just not as big a fan of. You know, number one, I like to go to these great places and play. And number two, I think our fans deserve to have great teams at home. So I don't know why, you know, I mean, I understand in Mike's case, you know, you're playing at a certain conference and that, but I don't know why we don't play more home and homes. I think it would benefit everybody. And that's what I'm in favor of, not only for our fans, for me personally, for me selfishly, that I get to go to, you know, Duke, that I get to go to Stanford, that I get to go to Arizona, I get to go to Texas, Carolina, Kentucky. You know, that's the greatest part. You know, there's nothing better than going in an opponent's arena and trying to see how good you are on the road. You really learn a lot about your players, and so I miss that a little bit, the way we've gone to these neutral games all over. But it is what it is, and thank God we've got a good game here, and I think we'll take it and our fans will take it.
You were open, you saw warts on your team. I think everyone did out in Oregon. But when you look at those final stat sheets, Tom, did you expect them to win and dominate like they did?
No. You know, I didn't. Although we only had 8 turnovers against UConn. So we did do a good job there. And if you watch the 24 turnovers, which I have on numerous times against North Carolina, they were bizarre turnovers, you know, illegal picks. They weren't, you know, you think of most turnovers as sloppy passes. There weren't as many of those as there were bizarre turnovers. But it doesn't matter either way. You don't get a chance to make a basket. And that's kind of what a turnover is. It depletes you the opportunity to score a basket when you're a team that's shooting 51%. You know, every time you turn the ball over, you're losing a point at least. And if you get a 3, or if you get to the free throw line, if you can get an offensive rebound, you might even get more. So that has to be cleaned up. I also think that we've got to do a better job. You know, Miles's case, I mean, he only played 16 minutes, I think, the second night he was there. And, you know, he wasn't 100%, so we'll get him back on track. We got to get him more involved, and we got to get Jaren a little bit more involved in the offense. So I thought the ball was stagnant and moving. We've got to improve in that area. But some of the reasons, we had some incredibly strange lineups in there a couple of times that, I mean, I'm ripping my staff and they're ripping me back on who do you want me to put in. We had 4 guys on the bench in foul trouble. And you know what? I don't think there were a lot of foolish fouls. I just, it is what it is. So we're going to have to do a better job in that area and understand that there's not a lot of flow to these games right now. I think that's maybe the biggest complaint of a lot of coaches. And when that happens, you're not as efficient, you know. Now, Notre Dame's been efficient, but, you know, some of it is too, how many really good teams are you playing? Because they're going to make you look less efficient.
I'm going to ask you about those turnovers, whether they were more self-created versus opponent-created, but...
Oh, I would, not to take anything away from any of the teams we've played, but I would unfortunately have to tell you that a lot of our turnovers have been self-created. If we're playing Arkansas and they're pressing us all over and we're turning the ball over, God bless, you know. I mean, that's their strength against maybe our weakness. Right now, it's not been I don't take anything away from the teams we've played defensively, but out there, maybe the best defensive team we played was UConn, as far as getting after you, and we had 8 turnovers, the fewest of the year. So it's more self-inflicted, and that part is concerning, disappointing to me, but I got to do a better job. I got to do a better job in practice, and will.
And with that, I mean, how much does that defensive rebounding help overcome some of that compared to where it was in that Duke game where you guys were struggling with it a little bit?
Yeah, and I think that's the encouraging part. You know, that's what you hope to do in these non-conference games. You hope to play against people you see what mistakes you made and then see how you adjust. And I think since that game, we've played a couple teams that are pretty good rebounding teams. I mean, Carolina was plus 14, I think 13-9 or something, which had a rank in the top 5 in the country. And we out-rebounded them bad. And so we put an emphasis on it, and we got some production out of it. And that's kind of what you hope to do in life. The turnovers, I guess, to make an excuse, are a little harder because you can't just say go cut a guy out and get the rebound. You're playing as the flow of the game goes. We've just got to not take as many chances. There were a couple behind the back dribbles off our feet that were ridiculous, and we had our share of ridiculous ones, and that more than them causing them, they were more self-inflicted, if that answers the question.
Maybe I'm guilty of watching
a lot of things, but yeah, go ahead.
Watching too many talking heads or listening to too many talk shows. Yeah. But there seems to be an unrealistic expectation on Miles Bridges. Like when he's not scoring 30 on a half an ankle, something's wrong. Can you explain what he gives you just by being in the lineup that maybe others don't see?
I wouldn't trade Miles Bridges for anybody in the country. How's that? And I wouldn't because this was an important tournament to him. He wanted to, win his first real championship and of some kind, and so throughout that game, I didn't even know if he'd play the second game, and he wanted to play. He wanted to play the first game, and I held him out. The second game, I knew he wasn't 100%, but we also knew we weren't hurting the ankle anymore. So we played him the 16 minutes, and hadn't practiced in 4 or 5 days. And then, of course, a day off, and we did a little bit with him, but not a lot. Tried to rest it and played that next game. But, when he was in those huddles late in the game, or even middle of the game, and not scoring a zillion points, not getting a zillion opportunities, which is more my fault than his, he was so into winning that, there's another guy that was like that everybody didn't think much of in a different way, and that was Draymond, and winning sometimes means more than certain things. In Miles' case, he was averaging 20 going in there. He just, on big stage did not have maybe as good a game because of the injury. If the talking heads don't understand that, then they're not very smart talking heads, to be honest with you. So there are going to be unrealistic expectations for Miles, for our team. He knew it coming back. I knew it coming back. I knew it about our team. We all knew it about our team. Hey, you deal with that, There's been better teams than us that have had to deal with it, and better players that had to deal with it. Grayson Allen got, 37 against us, and a couple nights later he got 8. People are going to put more into you too, but in Miles' case, I think the only reasons he didn't score more is, number one, wasn't as active because of, and number two, we have to go to him more. So I think you'll see both those things happen.
When it comes to Josh, I feel like he, more than any other player, you can see or kind of sense that confidence, if it's there or if it's not. It's really noticeable. He's not going to score 23 every night, but what's the key to getting that consistently from game to game, that he feels that confidence, you can see that from him?
Yeah, well, we talked to him a lot about the head going down in the Ferris State game and affected his defense, affected everything. You know, that's part of the maturation process that a kid has to learn how to deal with a little success and learn how to deal with a little failure. And I thought that was one of the things Josh was poor at. You know, we talked about it. We talked it to you guys. We talked it to him. His body language was, you know, and he didn't even realize he was doing it. And that's kind of what you learn. I had one parent tell me, you know, on a certain issue, that's why I sent my kid there. If he was already really good, I would, you know, I'd have sent him to the NBA or something. You know, I knew he had to grow. I knew he had to do these things. Josh is, you know, other than the injury, which took care of half of last year, I think he's made great progress. He's making progress every day in practice right now. He's getting a little more confidence, you're right. Feeling better about his shot. He's always worked hard on it. I think he's improved his defense, and maybe what he's improved the most is what we had a hard time getting him to understand last year was you got to run that lane. And he thought he was running it. We showed him films of last year's running and this year's running, and he started laughing, you know. And I said, that's what I was doing last year when I was laughing at you when you were telling me how hard you were running. And that's just part of what happens, you know. It's, again, to piggyback off of my friend's question here, expectations and all these things are so out of whack right now because of the one and done and the Duke Kentucky phenomenon. And every freshman's supposed to be this and every sophomore's supposed to be this. And if you have the best of the best, you're going to get some of that. We got a lot of that out of Miles, really over his career so far. But the normal process is that you grow and get better. And we just spend so much time wanting to speed the process and condemn the things. And somebody said to me, we want to get it right, but it doesn't have to be right now. I mean, there is going to be a process. And Josh is a great example of a guy who's really, you know, making progress now. And the injury slowed him a little bit at the beginning of last year. In fact, hurt him a lot. But he's making progress.
Tom, how exciting is it going to be for Michigan State University and their fans that they're going to get 3 straight days of MSU versus Notre Dame, obviously with basketball on Thursday, and then 2 straight nights of hockey on Friday and Saturday?
You know, I was just talking to Danton out you know, and really hats off to him. I am a big Michigan State fan, not a big Michigan State basketball fan. I actually came here and, you know, I told you the story that, you know, there were 4 football assistants. There was Terry Christensen in hockey. And, you know, that ticket in hockey was valuable. You know, times I wanted to sell it because I was a GA making nothing, but I enjoyed the hockey too much to sell my tickets. So I just didn't eat or date anyone because I didn't have any money. And instead, I went to hockey games. But I didn't miss many of those back then because I wasn't allowed on the road. And I went the other night, and it's not there where it was, but you can see that we're starting to make some progress. And then, you know, when you look at soccer, you look at basketball, you look at volleyball, you look at what football's done. I thought Kathy said it best. There's a fever, and when there's a fever, it permeates through the whole athletic department and hopefully the community. And that's, you know, the advantage of being more than a one-sport institution, like some have. And that's why I've always been, as Doug Weaver once called me, a great program guy, because I believe in all of them, and I think all of them are important. And the better others do, the better our own players see it. And there's just an excitement. So to have Notre Dame here 3 times, I've always had great respect for Notre Dame growing up, you know. That was the only football games on TV up in the UP, you know, so put the rabbit ears up and watch Notre Dame. And, you know, I have great respect for their program and their institution in general, and to I think the more that we can play them in all sports, the better, because it's a 2-hour drive. It's kind of what you hope for, and so I am excited about that. I hope we do well. I hope hockey does well, but I think it is really going to be great for our fans to have a Notre Dame overload here.
Tom,
I couldn't get a date either. That's right. That's right. I tried for a couple of your turn downs and it didn't work, but
I think Fred's getting his basketball analysis from the MLB Network, because I haven't heard the same stuff on Bridges from people. I think pretty mature on it. But the Bonzie Colson, different kind of power forward, I guess. Is that Jaron's matchup? And I mean,
yeah, it will be. I mean, Bonzie, you talk about things too that you look at. Jaron didn't score as many points, but man, he's made some adjustments. I mean, he had a guard, Mays, who can score from everywhere, and was averaging 21 points a game, and I thought did a phenomenal job on him. And now he's going to have, a real All-American that you can appreciate, because here's a 6'6" kid that just does a lot of things well and doesn't do anything beyond what he can do. Very efficient guy. I bet you there's not a coach in the country that wouldn't like to coach him. He just, at least the way he seems, I'm not in practices, but so it'll be another challenge for us to guard, one of the best in the country. And how do you get better practice than doing that at a young age? Kid that just turned 18 years old, for God's sakes. I think it's awesome, and we'll get more out of him offensively too. One of the ways, as we keep talking about why guys aren't scoring as many, when you're turning the ball over that many times, you just don't have as many opportunities. And we're getting 57, I think, shots a game, which is a lot more than the 51 or 2 we've had most years. And if we weren't turning over, we'd be in the 60s. If we're in the 60s, as I told our guys, more guys get to eat, And if you get to eat more, it's going to do something to your stats. So I think we're going to have our hands full with him, because I think he can beat you with a 3, even though that's not his forte, but he can really put the ball on the floor, and he's tough, and he's a good rebounder. He's just got a little bit of everything. A good passer, too. So maybe one of the more complete players will play this year.
Tom, are there any long-term benefits, I guess, particularly offensively, for the rest of those guys playing a tournament without Miles one game and with them limited the other 2? You had the other guys with the career highs. Other guys kind of learning how to take over games, that sort of thing?
It might be, but I bet you if you ask those guys, and if you'd asked me the question, would I rather learn that, the answer would be no. Because I think Miles is unselfish enough that I think if we took care of the ball, they'd all get the same amount of shots. But we'd be more well-rounded, and that's what we got to do now. That's the next step for us. We got to get more consistent and efficient offensively. And if we do that, I guess if I had to pick and choose for the fans, I'd rather be more farther ahead offensively than defensively. For the media, especially Fred, I'll separate him. I definitely would rather be better offensively than defensively for winning and what I think you want to accomplish in the long run, like our football team has done. They had some mediocre offensive days during those early stages this year, getting their quarterback acclimated, those receivers acclimated, and their defense was unbelievable. And the defense won them games then. And our defense has won us some games, but that is that's the steady factor. That, as they say, defense usually travels on the road where it's tougher to win, and hopefully we've got a good base there, and we'll build our base offensively.
Been about 2 weeks since Kenny Goins went down. Do you have any update on him, and is there a chance he'll be available Thursday?
Yeah, there is a chance. I think he's going to practice tonight, non-contact, maybe a little bit tomorrow. A lot like Denzel, Goran Suton. Those guys came back anywhere from 10, 11 days to 2.5 weeks. And he seems to be doing real well with it. There was no real damage. It was just cleaning it up a little bit. So there is a chance, and that would help us. I mean, we're just, especially on the perimeter, you know, and it gives us some options too, and moving Miles around a little bit, which would help.
I guess kind of building on top of that, how was Matt's knee? Taking a look back, I know he played a little bit against UNC, but is he 100%?
Matt. Foot? Oh, his foot? Oh. Matt McQuaid?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I thought he banged
it was
up his
his foot.
I'm sorry.
That's why I got screwed up, not because of the mat, because of the knee. He hurt it halfway through the game, the second game, so that was against UConn. And it really swelled up, to be honest with you, which I don't know if any of you have had a swollen arch. I haven't. But that's kind of a strange injury, you know, so they were concerned about it, x-rayed it, looked like it was all good. They just think he tweaked a tendon or even a nerve down there. And so we did all the things you got to do. That was good. He played gingerly the next night, and give him credit because he flat out sucked it up. I mean, it wasn't that we were worried about doing anything wrong to it. It was more worried about could he withstand the pain, and in a strange area, if you're a guard especially. But really improved that day a little bit, and then since he's been home, I think he'll practice some today, but we might hold him out a little bit. But I think he'll get back to normal pretty quick.
Commissioner Silva announced from the NBA that he wants to revisit one and done. He's not a fan of it. I'm just curious for you, does it feel good that somebody may be finally listening to some college coaches?
You know, the problem is, I think if you listen to college coaches, that's almost as bad as listening to the talking heads. We're all over the place too. I don't even know what I'm in favor anymore. The only thing I'm in favor of is figuring out a way that it benefits these kids in the long run. Not one or two kids that could do this, or not kids that do that. It just, how are we going to help these kids grow, make decisions, because there's a lot of bad people in there making decisions for them, and help them in the long run. And if it means that they can come right out of high school, I'm great. If it means that it's one and done, I'm great. If it means that they stay 3 years, I'm great. But we talk about all this research. The only research is, you know, what happens to the guy that makes millions of dollars. The guy that's on a street corner with a brown bag right now, we don't talk about him. The guy that doesn't have a chance to get his education or play in the NBA, we don't talk about him. There are a lot more of them than there are LeBrons and Kobes. And that's the problem. You media guys, just so I can blame somebody, haven't done as good a job of researching that part to give us statistics. You know, we're in an analytical world here, but there aren't a lot of analytics on those issues. You know, maybe hockey's better. Maybe we got to look at, you know, can they have agents as long as they are, what do they call them? Neil, what do they call them in hockey? Advisors. I don't know. Maybe we can come up with some cool words. Our basketball guys can have friends, you know. I mean, you know, I think that there's got to be something, and it's got to be something that is best for them. It shouldn't be what's best for college basketball, and it shouldn't be what's best for the NBA. Because you know what? College basketball is going to go on no matter what they do. And the NBA is going to go on no matter what they do. It's these people, these human beings that are going to win or lose. And I'll say that to the day I'm done, and I'll probably get criticized for it. I think of decisions I have to make at my age that I don't do a good job of. I'm not sure anybody can do a great job. I think there is still a process of getting something, and when you work through the process, you're usually in a better position to handle the success or failure that you're going to have. And until we take a 10-year study, maybe, not 20 and 30 like it used to be, but a 10-year study and really look at how many kids have come out, what has happened to them, how many that have been successful have any kind of life. Did they blow all their money? Did they do this? Did they do that? Those are the statistics that I think we have to look at. And if we do that, I'm cool with leaving as, freshman year of high school if that's what we think is best for them.
I heard Bill Walton say he's never been to your house. Would like to come. Think you can make that happen?
Sure. Bill wants to visit. Maybe we bring the Grateful Dead in, and the Youpers. We'll bring the Youpers in. They're good band, and Bill seems to like that kind of stuff. So Bill wants to come. He's invited.
Your guys held two teams below 25% shooting, or right around 25% shooting out in Portland. I guess, what were you most impressed about with their performance? And more specifically, is this the best rim protecting team that you've had since you've been here?
Yeah, I think the best rim protecting would be a good. I don't want to act like we're such a great defensive team yet. We haven't had enough studies where, so we had a Kobe and a LeBron moment where, but that's 2 games. There hasn't been enough of that yet. But I do think rim protecting is one of my better teams. I really do. I think defensively I wouldn't call it one of my best teams yet, but I think they're making some progress. I thought what this team did, Dane and DJ did an unbelievable job scouting. I think we've taken the scouting reports and we've put them to good use. And so it's kind of a neat thing now that we can share it with our staff too, because I thought we combined for all that.
I was going to ask about Cassius on the defensive side. I mean, he's got another challenge coming up. But, I mean, if you would have, even coming into the year, heard he was going to hold Barry to 2 of 11, I mean, how much would that have surprised you?
Are we going to be honest, or should I give you the political answer? Politically, that wouldn't have surprised me at all. Honestly, I would have been shocked. I think he's improved a lot, and yet got a long ways to go. But I think he did what you're supposed to do. He came into his sophomore year. He said, what do I have to get better at? That summer, he worked on some of those things, as did Josh. And, wow, just like it always happens in your job or mine, you spend more time on something, you put a little bit more emphasis on something becomes a little more important. And if you put all those things together, you usually get better. And I have great appreciation for the fact that even in the UConn game where he got all his accolades for scoring, he's been better defensively, and that's one of the reasons we're better defensively. So, I think, problem at that position, you got a lot of challenges just about every game. Someone's going to have the good teams are going to have a pretty good point guard. So. I thought he did a better job of getting over it. Now, I will say this. We have a combination to that. The screener is being guarded too, and Nick Ward was actually getting up somewhat this year. Last year I felt sometimes that Nick was playing in a different arena in a different game just because there was nobody there. And now he's done a better job. Gavin is great at it. Ben's getting better at it. And I think Jaron is, with his length, is pretty good at it. So, I think, number one, we're getting more help. And number two, Cassius has improved, and the combination has been really good.
Anything else, guys?
Well, hopefully you guys will be as excited about games like this as we are, but it is early season, and Fred reminded me of the fact that everybody just goes on one game and one thing. We're not as good defensively as we played in that tournament. North Carolina is definitely not as bad offensively as they looked in that game. You need a bigger sample size, to really figure out where you are. But I think what we're getting is a good chance to have a lot of samples when you play the number 1 team, number 9 team, number 5 team. When you play a team like UConn who's got jet quick guards. We've played so many different styles. We played Duke that played all zone. We played some teams played all man. this has been what you want in the non-conference if you can survive it. And, you know, I see Susie walking in, and I did talk to Gino after the game and told him he was a jerk for, you know, keeping his starters in, and I'm really kidding about that. But that game will help her. You know, we've had some blowout losses that have really helped us. Do you have the courage to play those teams, you know? Everybody says, well, you're not very good against North Carolina. You're not very good against Duke. We're not, but we're playing them and figuring out where we are and what we got to do to get better. And I think your team, your kids have to see the best sometimes to figure out, well, I'm working hard. You know, Matt Painter said something to me at our meetings. He said they were scrimmaging West Virginia. He said, because our kids think they play hard until you play West Virginia. Well, I would have to say over the years, there's not a lot of teams that play much harder than Purdue. But I learned that day in his mind, West Virginia plays a lot harder than Purdue. Not sure I totally believe that, but I got his point. And I think that's what's great about playing the people you play. And yeah, it's insulting. It's, you know, I walk in those arenas and I get the same thing from Carolina. You know, you're 1 in this, you're 0 in this, you know, that bothers me. But I like better walking in those arenas than not facing them. And I think that's what, you know, the philosophy's been around here in a lot of sports. I think that's what our AD's philosophy is, and I think it's going to benefit all of us. So if this is Notre Dame week because of hockey and basketball, that's great. And we're going to just try to keep on improving because we have a lot of improving to do. The good news is the ceiling is a lot higher than it is right now. The bad news is we're not going to get there if we keep turning the damn ball over. So we got to straighten that out. So thanks a lot.